Sunday, half an hour, 1 hour, whatever. You can join in if you want. And hi, Hashim. How are you?
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you for being here today. So, Hashim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, so my name is Hashim Zaman, and I'm an environmental economist by profession. And I'm a graduate of NUST, actually. So I did my bachelor's from NUST in economics. Yes, and then I worked in different organizations such as National Rural Support Program, Khan Foundation, WWF, and IUC in Pakistan. And then I got a chance to go to Netherlands and do my master's in environmental economics and natural resource management. So yeah, I'm done with that now, and I'm back in Pakistan. And yes, I'm stuck here at home, just like everyone else.
That's so amazing that you're from NUST. I didn't know that. All of us who started the climate we're all NUSTians. We did environmental engineering, and we were actually all class fellows. So
nice.
That's really, yeah. So I understand that you've traveled all over Pakistan, and you probably know more than a lot of us over here about the challenges that people face every day because of climate change in Pakistan. Would you like to talk about that?
Yes, I was lucky enough to travel across Pakistan since the very start. So yes, I was going up north a lot, and I was looking at all the ground realities that are happening on ground in terms of all the glacial changes up north and the food security in Punjab, for example. And if you go down south, then the sea level rise and the sea intrusion along the coastal belt of Pakistan. That's very unprecedented right now, and that's leading to a lot of different problems such as climate migration and a lot of food security problems that are happening there. And then these conflicts associated with natural resources are coming into play. So, I mean, when I came across all these phenomena, I was more inclined to actually, translate that love for the environment into my work, and that is now conservation and the sustainable use of resources. So, yeah, and I think essentially there were two reasons. Pakistan is the fifth most affected country in climate change in the world, according to the German Watch Index. And so, yeah, we are seeing some very unprecedented changes in the past. And also, Pakistan doesn't have a lot of environmental specialists and climate change scientists in that sense.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of like forest specialists and a lot of environmental engineers, but we don't have people who can actually formulate the environmental policy or take this entire movement ahead. So that's where I felt there was a gap, and I just wanted to contribute in any capacity I can. Yeah.
That's absolutely true. We do lack in human resource a lot. But even as we see that the Pakistani people are being impacted on a daily basis by climate change, but we still have a gap in understanding of what climate change is and people believing in climate change. Why do you think that is, and why do you think we can't overcome that? We haven't been able to overcome that lately.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question because, we are kind of, as a society, we are really ingrained in the institutions and the value systems and the trends around us. So we are kind of entrapped in that vicious cycle. And I think the primary reason is limited cognition, frankly, because people don't really understand the direty of the situation. They don't know what is happening, why is it happening, and what they can do actually to mitigate those things. So essentially it's that, and then there's a lot of free riding problem as well, because we say that we contribute only 0.8% of the entire emissions in the world, but still we are the fifth most affected in the world due to climate change. So, but we have this notion of, if all these developed countries have progressed on coal and all these fossil fuels, then we might as well go on the same track as well. And then there's I think one of the major problems is that there's no immediate short gains if go on the sustainable lifestyle track, because climate change is a silent killer at the end of the day. So you can't really see the changes immediately, and then in the long run you see these changes, and then immediately there is this reactionary response that we have in terms of, for example, the heat waves and the water crisis that we had in Pakistan. So And then there's also the reasons of some people believing that they don't have enough control over the entire situation. That they can't. This phenomenon is maybe too big for them to change personally. And then it's the techno salvation. I think that's one of the biggest problems right now. Not in terms of Pakistan, just generally, because we rely too much on science and technology to save us from this crisis, and we don't really change our personal front.
Yeah, I've also noticed that a lot of people confuse themselves between environmental issues and climate issues. Because although the two are very closely linked, there's still a difference between water pollution and, say, heat waves. They're not completely interlinked. And people like that plastic thing that came out last year, the plastic bag ban. That was happening on the orders of the Ministry of Climate Change, but in reality, climate change does not have a very strong link to plastic per se. That's more of a pollution thing. So there's also that gap in knowledge that we have as a community that we can't really piece 2 + 2 together to see what we need to do for climate change and what we need to do basically because the environment is degrading. So, and now we have the coronavirus. So how do you think that this whole corona and climate thing links?
I think this is a big wake-up call for everyone because the bigger looming crisis and the disaster that is coming, which is climate change. So this is just, I think this virus is actually tells us how fragile the entire ecosystem is, whether it's the economy or the health systems in place. So climate change, I mean, it is obviously linked to the two things. We know that the whole virus was a zoonotic virus, which is when the animals come and play with the humans and the interaction that goes on. And we saw it with the SARS and MERS as well. They were of the same nature as well. And we also saw that the people and the societies which were more, affected by air pollution, for example, they were twice as much likely to die from SARS. So, I mean, it's the same nature as the rest of the pandemics in the past. But in the last 2 weeks, we have been seeing a lot of different positive sides of this pandemic, in the sense that the climate changes, like the ozone hole is recovering, and the wildlife is reclaiming their lands, and the air quality is increasing. But I think it is dangerously misleading because of a few factors. Firstly, we need to understand that the carbon dioxide, the lifespan of that gas is hundreds of years. So even if we don't pollute in the exact same intensity and frequency as now, I mean, that gas is still in the air after and before this pandemic started. And also, I think the whole transition towards renewables, for example, it will be actually hampered in a very intense way because, as the whole global supply chain is being affected, we procure a lot of different equipment, such as these wind turbines, solar panels from China. And with the demand and supply distorted right now, we can't really procure that stuff. So I think the transition towards renewables will be kind of delayed in that sense. And so this is one of the very important reasons, the factors that we need to take into account. And then a lot of the climate movement has been affected because the COP that just happened and the Paris Agreement has been delayed because of that. So all the talks have been hampered, and the fundings to different nature reserves and, for example, the Amazon forest has been delayed. So there's a lot of threats of poaching in that sense. So we really need to, I think, look at the bigger picture here and not really get overexcited about the whole situation. But actually, I think this also brings the fact that it's a very important point in our lives that we can make this transition, because we have been talking toward there have been talks about stimulus, and so a lot of, for example, in the US, the aviation industry is being given billions of dollars to get back into the business. So now I think now is the high time that we can really invest into renewables and make this transition, because otherwise it's just delaying tactics. The transition that you have to make in the next 50 years I mean, this is actually a good opportunity that we can do that right now because of this virus.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. This is the time to do it. So, but what do you think that the solution to this whole climate crisis is in the end? Like, I know that there's no easy way out, or there's no like one option that checks everything, but there still has to be like a path that we can take for a better future.
Yeah, I think on the global scale, so we follow this linear economic system, right? So
Yes.
which is like you extract resources from the earth, you create energy out of it, and then the rest goes to, back into the earth as waste, basically. So I think this whole capitalist global economic system that we are onto, that's actually just pursuing endless economic growth and profits. That's essentially, wrong in the first place. So I think the transition towards a circular economy is the need of the hour. And circular economy, in layman terms, is basically just producing something, consuming it, and reinvesting it back into the system. So it's like working in a closed loop, and it's giving like a positive feedback mechanism. And in the end, you have no waste at all. And I think that with waste as well, we need to really understand that waste is a resource, and we can highly make use of that instead of just considering as
Absolutely.
something of no value. And
like
countries like Switzerland. So countries like Switzerland and Sweden are, for example, importing waste and creating energy out of it. There's a whole debate of waste to energy at the incineration part. But still, we really need to understand, there's a big problem of waste in Pakistan, for example, like in terms of food waste and electronic waste. And in hospital waste, you can see it right now in these times. So I think we really need to work on the waste disposal systems and actually have these waste separation systems in place. And instead of just focusing on landfills, do this transition towards, more renewable and more effective ways of waste disposal.
We definitely need more creative solutions. We actually have a few minutes left, but yes, sorry, go on.
No, you can. We can talk about the problems in Pakistan. If you look at, for example, water. We say that Pakistan is the third most pressed country in the world. But if you look at the water intensity, for example, which is basically the per cubic use of water against the unit of GDP. So if you look at that, then we are the most water-intensive country in the world. But at the same time, we have the biggest glaciers outside the polar region. We have the largest irrigation system in the world.
Absolutely.
And at the end, according to the World Bank, $70 billion worth of water gets thrown into the Arabian Sea every year. So, this really makes me think if we really have a water crisis at the end of the day, or is it just ineffective utilization, or is it just, different priorities that we have? So, there should be more focus on the groundwater aquifers and the recharge of that instead of just focusing on, building dams and stuff. Because I think we, as a South Asian phenomena, I think we are really obsessed with these engineering works and to be, save us from this crisis, and not like changing our personal fronts, and on a macro level have those policies that can actually do this transition towards a more sustainable future. So,
somehow we
and in terms of...
sorry, go on.
No, please go ahead.
Somehow we always manage to stay one step behind of the world.
Exactly. It's always a reactionary response. There's no preparedness or like mitigation policies so that we are ready for, every kind of crisis in the end. And even with the air quality we are seeing in the past few years, Pakistan, Lahore has been in the top 3 at the air quality index for so many years now. And we did procure these air quality monitors from Japan, for example, but they're not in the working capacity right now. And then at the end, we do blame other people or other countries on the transboundary air pollution, for example. We blamed India when the smog problem came up, but we never talked about the vehicular emissions or the brick kilns that was the main cause of that. as vehicular emissions contribute like 40% to the smog problem. So I think we really need to realign our perspectives and priorities in that sense. I mean, the government of Pakistan and the Ministry of Climate Change is, I think, on the right track. It is on the right track. We have some certain policies. We have a 5-point agenda. The 5-point agenda works on the Recharge Pakistan, which is working on the groundwater aquifers, and then there's this electric vehicle policies, and we have the forestation program as well. So, I mean, but still at the end of the day, they are working in a certain wavelength, which is, I mean, in terms of the dissemination part, it's not, working correctly for them because the entire masses don't really understand the direty of the situation. And it brings me back to the point of limited cognition, like if a person doesn't know what is happening and what they can do about it, I mean, so you can't really solve the problem then. Absolutely. You can have all the policies and have all the frameworks in place, but then if your people are not really aware, then, I mean, you can't really make work for the greater good in that sense.
I feel like it all ultimately links up to awareness and education in the end. The number of people who that really education defines how much of your workforce is really, that can be included in your human resource, who can actually be utilized for the good of the country instead of being a burden. However, we just have a few more minutes up, but we have this question by one of our viewers, Musab Said. He asked, what if 2020 is still 75% warmer as expected and people say we stayed indoors but it still didn't get any better? How do we change this mindset that we're staying at home but it's not getting any better?
Yeah, as I said, we are so deeply ingrained in the habits that we have. I mean, I think it's high time we can actually think on the lines that what do we use, where do we procure that, what is the source of that, and how much and in what frequencies and intensity we use it. So I think on the personal fronts, we can really rethink on our consumption patterns and lifestyles in terms of what we consume, what we eat, what we wear. So, I mean, and now that we can't really buy a lot of stuff, and so, I mean, this is a I think a good opportunity for us to actually make this transition towards a more sustainable lifestyle. And I mean, we are the most affected in the world. I mean, the 5th most affected in the world. So I think we should be doing more than the rest in that sense. And I mean, in terms of education as well, I think there needs to be a lot of reforms in the education sector because, like, people, I mean, the environment and the climate change aspect has been lacking in Pakistan since the last few years. Since the last few decades in that sense. So, I mean, there needs to be a curriculum where climate change and environment is a mandatory component of every degree in every university. And that would really solve the problems of all the inaction that we are facing.
But fun fact, Hashim, actually, out of all the provinces that we have in Pakistan, KPK actually did introduce an environmental education book in their environmental sciences book in their board curriculum in 9th and 10th grade. I did look over the entire contents of the book, and they didn't seem to mention environmental issues or climate change at any point in the book. So that's also a big issue. Like you said, we don't really have that many experts to guide this curriculum either. So that's another big issue that we're facing. So
yes, actually, that's what I said. The dissemination part, that's lacking from the Ministry of Climate Change as well. They are working in this framework, which is the 5-point agenda. But then the awareness part is lacking because I think we really need a curriculum and mass awareness program throughout the country, which is based on local contexts and which is obviously based on the local languages. So you can't really influence a person in interior sin if you just give him a booklet which talks about environmental problems in English and gives him solutions which he can't really, have the resources to solve those. So, I mean, we really need to, I think, focus on the local context in that sense.
Yeah, and how to connect with people.
And also the incentives part is also very lacking because we have seen in a lot of countries in terms of waste disposal as well. I mean, we can, we can go towards this renewable transition period if we have these. So first you sensitize the people about the situation, and which is obviously through awareness, and then you provide them incentives. Because obviously, if people only worry about roti kapra makan, then I understand that fact, but they really need to understand that this roti kapra makan actually depends on the resources that are actually in place. And if those resources are not utilized effectively, then these three things won't be ensured in the long run. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of different local NGOs are working in different spheres, but that's mostly, I think, on poverty alleviation and different socioeconomic initiatives. So, I'm really hopeful that in the next decade, we will be incorporating the environment and climate change aspect in all those interventions that we do. Yeah.
We have one last question before we say goodbye to you. Faraz Ali, I guess is his name. He asked, what is one thing in my daily lifestyle that I can change which will help create a positive impact in the overall ecosystem? Would you like to answer that?
So as a Pakistani, I think we really, our diets are very meat intensive. So that also can be transitioned towards a more cleaner diet, because as we know that even if you are eating more vegetables, that doesn't mean you're not getting a lot of proteins in that sense. The new research says that a more cleaner diet is a more vegetable diet in that sense. So the eating patterns and where do you source your food from? So if you're importing local stuff, then that's good, because the localized economy is in the long run more sustainable. And then also how you consume water, for example. And in what frequency do you use it? I ordered these water aerators that you plug into the faucet of your toilets. So actually you're saving 50 to 60% water at the end of the day. It's what you wear. We talk about a lot of carbon footprint, but we never talk about water footprint. And the jeans you wear, that's consuming like hundreds of liters of water. So, so there's a lot of things that we can do, and I hope that your page can actually it'll actually give this information out, and people can, actually undertake those sustainable lifestyle patterns.
With help from people like you, of course, with help from people like you, like experts who know what we need to do about climate change and stuff. Thank you so much, Hashim, for joining us today, and it's been a real pleasure to hear your insights, and we hope that we'll be seeing you soon sometime, because you seem like a real expert on the environmental issues and climate change. So we'd love to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
No
I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. I love it.
Bye-bye.